Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner, and today's podcast is how to experience joy and pleasure in your life amongst the demands of motherhood. So just like last week, we had a beautiful listener write into us. This one also comes from her. I would absolutely love you to dive deeper into the topic and hear how you embody and experience joy and pleasure in your life amongst the demands of motherhood, how you carve out time for yourself to experience these feelings, but also how you experience these feelings amongst your day-to-day life, and to shine a light on any threads from the past that may be holding women and mothers back from allowing and receiving joy and pleasure. So wonderful.
So good. And I'm so excited to dive into that. But we do have something else we need to touch on first, don't we?
Well, because what is wonderful is that if you are not in our free Facebook group where we pre-record and live stream our podcasts, then get on in there. It's just a Facebook free group, and it just means you get pre-release and video content from the podcast itself. That's Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner, so you can find that. But what we realized is because we just recorded that one, which was last week's episode, we were like, crap, we left a couple of things out of that conversation. So we just wanted to bring your attention to, given that these two topics are fairly aligned, when it's all feeling too hard and heavy, how do I balance my mental state was last week. How do I balance my perceptions and my mind and the way I'm seeing and viewing myself in the world that's informing my behaviors? This one's, how do I do that in a day-to-day life with the demands of motherhood? So balancing between those two things we just wanted to pinpoint was you can't be conscious all the time. The degree to which you are conscious, you have an equal amount of unconsciousness. It's always in conservation.
Yeah. And to that point, because there can be a bit of a projection often of like who's more spiritual. And so you've got your typical, like what we might consider spiritual in like the New Age movement. But there's just as much spirituality and spiritual growth for the person whose top value in their life is running a corporation, right? But you judge it as less spiritual because it doesn't look like your form of spirituality based on your value system, based on your view of the world. So also, it's important to keep that in mind. And in doing that, that will also help you meet that other person that we suggested you put yourself with, who is the person who has completely opposite values to you, and see what you can learn. See how you're the same than different.
Yes. And also just opening up to, okay, show me all of the ways that I'm not conscious, because I have myself and consciousness on a pedestal, that I'm so conscious, living so consciously. Therefore, my sister who's completely unconscious is fairly rubbish in comparison. Like on some level, we're doing that with other people in our lives if we're living there.
Yeah.
Where am I equally unconscious and where are they equally conscious? So it could be that you really do spend a heck of an amount of time focused on expanding your thinking or your belief systems. Where is your unconsciousness? In how you're having sex, in how you're communicating in your relationship, in how you're moving your body through the day, in what you're feeding and putting into your body, in how you're educating yourself in other areas of your life, like finances or business growth. There is an equal amount of unconsciousness and dysfunction to the degree that you perceive consciousness and function.
Yeah. And we've got to be willing to sit to look at that, right? And to do that like self-governing of going, shit, yeah, actually, I have order here and I have chaos here.
Yeah, because it actually helps you find more pleasure and joy because you're no longer running this like high over functioning. I'm so conscious. I've got to stay on top of this. I've got to be conscious all of the time. And, no, because, oh, crap. Okay. I'm equally as unconscious. I can't be over it all. So how about I just let go a little more?
Mm. And our other point we want to talk about too, which we didn't fully come to in the last podcast, was that if you've got, like, we're talking all about how, the hard work mentality and we need to let go of it. But actually, if you're more in the space of occupying more feminine energy, then you're probably listening going, hard work? I don't really work that hard. You might have actually thought you might need to do a bit more hard work. And there's value in that too, right? Like if we're so fixated on the hard work mindset, then we need to break that apart. If we realize that we're a bit wobbly and moving with the seasons all the time and so consumed by all of the feelings of everybody around us and we're ungoverned, then actually a bit more of the hard work mindset is what we're seeking.
Totally, 100%. So I love that this listener's question came from a place of there's all this feminine rising. We want to increase more pleasure and abundance and joy. Yes. And we also have to realize that there's a point at which the feminine is dysfunctional too. Right. So when you are so focused on flow, as Bridget just said, and feeling and presence, and the overwhelm of feeling becomes, you find yourself in overwhelm spirals very often. Feelings are intense. Feelings consume the entire day. You're focused on how you feel about something rather than what actually needs to get done or would be potentially the harder route, right? If there's so much flow, sometimes that can actually put us into a space of overwhelm and feelings are so intense that we can't do anything else but feel.
And it also actually makes parenting harder because we are pulled into our children's stuff more often because we are not the solid anchor. We're in the stormy seas with them.
Yeah. So we really do have to just balance our own internal polarizations. And we just wanted to put a pin note in here to go, okay, we've pretty much focused on the hard work mindset and lack mindset last time. What does it look like if we're so in this feminine rising abundance, feels good, flow, so much flow, I need to flow all of the time, and so much feeling? What does that look like when that actually is robbing us of the experience of joy?
Yes. Juicy. So we wanted to, I guess, preface it with the context of motherhood in which we exist, right? So we are both creating ourselves in motherhood, but we are also profoundly influenced in the context within which we mother. And that is the sociological construct of motherhood. And that in the modern day mothering era is pretty intense. There's, we're expected to not only feed, house, clothe our children, educate them well. We've got the pressure of extracurriculars. We've got the pressure of this mentality of intensive mothering. So gone are the days where the children would play for hours and hours in the street and you wouldn't always know where they were. Now, we're constantly looking at, emotionally attuning to them and are their needs being met? And is there anything that they're like needing to be stretched in? And the layers upon layers that come with that, because we're now also in some ways they're psychologists too. We take on board that role now, knowing what we know about neuroscience and emotional intelligence. And so the context of mothering has changed. And with that, many mothers who value mothering feel burdened by that responsibility and how they create space and room and permission for themselves, underneath all of that responsibility. So that's what we want to hash out here.
Totally. Where we'd love to begin is one that we often come back to, which it's not true that it's all you and that it has to be all you because there's no one else or there's nothing else unless you show up for that thing. The interesting thing is that when we're running that as a belief system, we won't actually let ourselves step back. And therefore, no one steps up because there's nothing missing. We're taking up that space. There's no space to be taken up. There's no real estate available. We've bought it all.
Yeah.
And so
we've got the stamp on that, right? We're proud about that.
Yeah. And so because we keep taking up that space and buying that real estate, it's easy to go, well, there's no real estate available anywhere. There's no one else. Yeah. Because you haven't even given the universe a second to go, oh, shit, we need someone to fill that job or buy that real estate.
Yeah.
You actually have to be able to hold yourself in the space while the world and reality around you orchestrates with the law of attraction to bring you the thing that you want. If you keep filling the space and there's no wanting, needing, there's no void, there's no need.
Yeah.
So it's a very fine line what we're doing here. And I had this beautiful text that I read before we started podcasting today, actually, in Honey Club with this woman who went, oh my goodness, for the first time yesterday, I ran around and did the grocery shop and came home with all of the bags. And normally I would unpack the whole thing and, you know, just be in the next thing with motherhood. And instead, I only put away the perishables and left just bags of stuff on the floor and went and watched a movie with my kids. And she said, my husband walked home and there's all these bags all over the floor with all the shopping. And he was like, oh my God, are you okay? And she was like, actually, I'm really good. I was just tired and didn't want to. So I sat down and watched a movie. Yeah. And she said she was tired. She enjoyed watching the movie with her kids. She went to bed and left it there. Never done this before. By the time she got up the next morning, her husband had put it all away and the entire room was spotless.
Amazing.
Again, never happened before. Not because it's not possible, right? Not because it's not possible, but because she had already bought that real estate. She'd already put herself in the job. So there's no job to be advertised.
Yeah.
There's no one else needed.
And it's a little bit like, you know, even us as mothers, if you value health, like you'll be thinking, oh, I've got to organize the snacks and I've got to think about that. And I, like, even before we came to podcast, I said to my husband, oh, they're going to be hungry soon, so you might want to organize something. And I walked back out before, like, he's making this elaborate snack plate that I would make, right? But I'm not making that because I'm here doing this. And so past me might have thought, oh gosh, you know, I might have to push recording back bits so I can make sure that, like, you know, all the snacks are organized, all the food's sorted. No, I trust that space can be safely taken up and that those needs will be adequately and beautifully met, even if it's not me meeting it.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes it's a flex for us, right? Totally. To go like, oh, okay, can I step back there?
And also,
I would usually take up all the space.
Yes. And also, though, what I want to add in here is we actually have to allow a space of waiting and wanting, as opposed to I'm only okay when I meet my own needs and completely self-sufficient and do the shit that I say has to be done when it has to be done. So only okay when I do the doing, masculine.
Yeah.
My mind just went totally blank there. Oh, yeah. And only okay if instantaneously that exact thing is met in exactly the moment with, you know, the way that I want it when I want it. I'm only okay when those two things happen. I'm not okay to be in the space of yearning, of calling towards me what I want, of being in energetic alignment, of actually using my magnetism. That is actually a practice of calling towards you what you want, not only being okay when it's already arrived.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no kind of belief in potential if you're just waiting for the confirmation that it's done and it's done your way and it can only be done your way.
And you're only okay and happy, satisfied when it is. It's like that instant gratification system that I'm sure many of us rail against.
Isn't it?
Yes, yes. And many of us rail against with our kids.
Yeah.
You're fine not to have that thing. You're not only okay when you have that thing, it's the same for us.
Yeah.
It is an unhealed part of our attachment systems versus it having any state of reality.
Yeah. And it's I know certainly in children it's called like building their frustration tolerance. And so if we're going to create new ways of being and relating, we need to build our own frustration tolerance in that space in between that new potential happening. That
yes.
new being happening.
Right. And while we're there, finding joy and pleasure in being there. So like that story of that mum I just told you about, she wasn't watching the movie, cursing her husband, cursing life, not being satisfied, being grumpy, throwing shit around. It's all on me. No. She was sitting there in her feminine going, I am just loving myself and life and my children right now. This is the most glorious experience. So what does she attract? More of that feeling.
Yeah, beautiful.
Right? So you really want to use your feminine here in those spaces. That's what it's for.
Because the resentment and the stacking and the rigid way of having to do things is repelling as well. Like it repels everything that you're seeking.
Exactly. And also just remember, the law of attraction doesn't pick and choose. It's not going, oh, well, that's good for you and that's not good for you, so I only bring you the things that are good for you. The law of attraction does not have that bias. The law of attraction literally is like gravity. It's like, will bounce back to you whatever you're focused on. So you focused and putting out the signal of I'm frustrated, I'm angry, there's nobody but me, this is all there is, I'm a slave, I'm unnoticed, I'm unvalued, I'm, exhausted, and I've got to keep going. Cool, that's what it's going to ping pong back to you.
Yeah. And, when we bring the brain into it, the more you run that neural pathway, the stronger that neural pathway is, and the more you're going to see it play out. It's like, you increase the power of that pattern.
Totally. So it would be much wiser to get comfortable with the idea that when it's not you, when you step back, who steps up? Could be your partner, could be your child, could be a sibling, could be an aunt, a next door neighbor, a friend, a teacher. Why are we judging the form? Because our children will always call towards them exactly the person they need to fulfill exactly the experience that they need. We can't judge who that is.
Yeah. We can get curious about why that is or what they might be seeking in that, which is a much more beautiful place to be, rather than that's wrong. It should be, I don't like it. I need to fix that. I need to change that, right? Like to just take a moment to be really curious about, why this friend right now? Why this interest right now? What's that calling closer to them and to me?
Yeah. And also when I step back, who steps up? Oh, that's so interesting. How are they in greater values alignment with my child than what I am right now?
Yeah.
Because we want our children to subordinate to our values, but the truth is often they'll be different.
Yeah. And we have idealisms that we take into what they need, so I'm often like thinking back to the way that I approached the school before Sylvie started, like thinking that she was going to need like a lot of help to feel safe in that environment, and that her nervous system might struggle. And yet, like, amazing, right? Like, just love school, teacher adores her, teacher scaffolds her beautifully. Like, I couldn't be more pleased with her settling in. And yet I went in with all this story thinking it's not going to work, she's not going to fit that system. And the truth is she's getting what she needs, and she's being supported in ways that perhaps I wouldn't support her and couldn't support her.
It's so beautiful.
Right? But it requires a humility to accept that, to receive that, to build a bridge from your value system to another's and see all of the ways that they are so beautifully entangled and supportive of each other.
And when you do that, what is the byproduct? Joy and pleasure.
Yeah.
Because you're no longer fighting. Right.
You're not fighting a child who doesn't want to go to school.
You're not fighting wars. It doesn't matter who it's with.
Yeah.
Life.
You
become back in a place of abundance and flow and ease.
Yeah.
Right? There's instantaneously, wow, I can really receive and be in joy at how joyful your experience is, and how joyful that relationship is with that teacher, and how joyful all of this learning and opening is for you. I can be in joy with that. I can receive joy witnessing you in joy.
Yeah. Like this beautiful contagiousness.
Yeah. And I can receive joy when I see this teacher who I had previously judged and decided wasn't going to be a good fit, or the system wasn't going to be a good fit. I actually can receive joy from the system, and I can receive joy from watching this teacher and the system nurture my child.
Yeah. Yeah. How liberating is that?
Joy isn't always self-created. Joy is often more the willingness to reduce the polarizations that are blocking the joy. that's present in the moment.
Mm. Yeah. And we only kind of avail ourselves or access that to the degree to which we, challenge those polarizations that are in the way of being able to feel that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So you will find more joy the more in alignment you live. And if you are living from a place of, I have to do it all because there's no one else, you're actually not choosing your life. You're not choosing it. You will feel more resentment. You will feel more burden. You will feel lower vibe emotions because you're not in alignment. You're living from a place of should or have no other options. You're living from a victim state, a lack state. It's not true. So just by teasing that open, you're automatically opening up greater alignment, higher vibe, more joy, more freedom, more flexibility, more pleasure. Because the closer you get to your true alignment, actually the more pleasure and joy is present because you're always living in things that are inspiring to you.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking like I'm playing devil's advocate and thinking like, what about the mother with, the single mother with 3 kids who's working 2 jobs and and is so in service or in survival that joy feels inaccessible. And what would you say? And, I would see that as, a nervous system that is needing help to get out of survival. But, you being a mother also of a child with additional needs and who needs a lot of scaffolding, how would you suggest that mother makes possible the lens shift, the physical embodiment practice shift to be able to find those glimmers, that reality?
Yeah. And well, I mean, first off, I think you'd have to look at the story that being a single mother means that's not available to me.
Yes.
Because there are plenty of examples in your space, in my spaces, in people that we've interviewed on this podcast, where that is completely the opposite experience. Single mothers who have incredible experience. I interviewed Amy Taylor-Kabaz and my mind's just gone blank.
Lisa
Corduff, thank you. Both single mothers living exceptional lives of joy, running 7-figure businesses. Single mothers. There are just as many examples of thriving single mothers as there are of struggling. Like there is an equal number of examples for struggling in relationship mothers as there are for thriving in relationship mothers.
Yeah.
I just think we have to first look at the perceptions that we believe limit our reality.
Yeah. And also understand too that like if we're continuing to hold a particular story, why? Because the other thing is we can hide behind those. We can hide behind and fully support ourselves in the beliefs that it's way harder.
Right.
Because we'll also see enormous examples of that, of the stigmatization, of, of the lack of services, of the responsibility, of all of those things. So that's a very legitimate position to take up. But if you're wanting to change your reality, then it's going to require a surrounding yourself of examples of people who have bucked that reality or challenged that reality.
You have to prove it to your mind.
Yes.
That the opposite is equally true.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that your experience isn't valid or isn't true and real. It is equally as true and real as the opposite. That's all we're trying to get you to see here. They're equally true. So which do you want to pick? Because both those equally true examples will have a completely different way of thinking, which will inform a completely different way of doing, which will inform a completely different reality. That's all it is.
Yeah. I just love to make that emphasis because particularly if we have, any kind of social justice lens or set of values, we're going to be thinking about the disadvantaged. We're going to be thinking about those less fortunate and for whom there are barriers, right? And that's important because that helps us to elevate society when we consider all of those people. But we also have a responsibility that in order to level that up and to serve those groups of people, we need to look at, well, are the stories that I'm telling myself supporting me to grow beyond what I perceive my limits are right now? And if those stories are reinforcing everything you see around you that feels disempowering, then they need to change. Yeah. And they change by seeing examples of what's possible when you think it's impossible.
Totally. So I think there's that. And then I think there's also the legitimate reality of how hard your struggle is on a day-to-day basis. And also, what else can we access here? Because you don't have to be a stay-at-home mother.
Yeah. You
could go and work full-time and have your children in care. You don't have to be doing this life ever. You don't have to be in this relationship. You don't have to be living in this suburb or country. You don't have to be tied to this job. You don't have to be a stay-at-home mum. So if you are choosing it, fucking choose it. Don't live a life and half live it by going, well, fuck, I hate this.
Yeah. And even though even the suggestion of choice feels impossible, that's the very reason. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Energy there. That's the very reason to explore it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's become a cave.
Curious. Just get curious. It's all, I mean, this podcast is based on curious conversations, right?
Yeah.
We will never sit here and say one is right and one is wrong. We're always going to sit here and say, let's look at both being equal.
And if you've heard us do that and you've listened long enough, we will have probably come back around.
Yeah. Totally.
as is what happens.
Totally. I mean, you can only get so much done in a single podcast.
Yeah.
But over the course of this podcast, you will see that we hold both because they're all true. And all that matters at the end of the day is your alignment, because your joy and pleasure and ease and abundance and flow requires that you live the most authentic and aligned life. That may mean that you have to disintegrate previous identities that said the best mum was a stay-at-home mum who devoted herself entirely to her kids. I had to go through that one, because I had such a gaping fucking mother wound that was running that. It wasn't an authentic choice. It wasn't what lit my fucking soul on fire that made me an incredible mother. It was me going, I have to do the opposite of her in order not to feel so bad. And we just bog ourselves down in that. So whatever choice, and I say this to my clients all of the time, if you have ever been a couple with me, you will know that I will say to you, why are you here? Like, why this person? Why this relationship? Because never in human history have we had so much option to not be this. Same with parenting. If you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, you better know your why. And it better be bigger than the bullshit that holds you back in your day-to-day. Because at the end of the day, if this is an aligned choice, on the vast majority of times, like a 70-30 rule, it should feel really fucking good. And if it's not, then is it actually a choice for you? Is it a liberated choice for you? Or is it you choosing based on a set of conditioning and rules that previous incarnations and lineages have made up for you?
A great question to ask is, is this a heart yes? Like, is this my heart choosing this? Or is this coming from all of the reasons why I should?
Yeah.
Because if it's from all of the reasons why I should, then that all of those are just being invited to be dismantled.
Right. It's literally how I walk through. We're going to talk about, answer this question. How do you do joy and pleasure in your day-to-day life? It's because I literally am continuously stock taking. Bridgie and I both do this every 3 months, every 6 months. How aligned is my life? What do I want more of? What do I need less of? Where is it out of whack? How do I get it back on track? What are the beliefs I need to let go of? And day to day, am I leading from a place of should, or am I leading from a place of devotion and joy?
Yeah, absolutely. And in that, like, that identity death that's often required, like, it's there's an identity death that's required as we become mothers. There's an identity death that's required as we mother and the longer we mother, right? Like, it happens all of the time. But if we continue to resist it and resist it and resist it and resist it, then we kind of live in a shell of our former selves, because our purpose is to evolve, and that requires a letting go of things, of ways of being, of beliefs about ourselves, of where we've tried to fit ourselves in, when in fact, like, we have so much choice. It's like that Rumi quote, love throwing in Rumi quote. It's like, why do you stay in the cage when the door is wide open?
Mm. Yeah. Because, and also I'm just going to, again, play devil's advocate here. Yes, my choice was to be a full-time stay-at-home mother, but I always knew why I chose that.
Mm.
I could always see how it was on the path to my expansion and growth, that it was my temple and it was my spiritual practice, and it was where I feel most lit up, joyful, pleasureful, and aligned. Even on the days where it was fucking hard, there was shit I could find that I loved.
Mm.
But if at any point, and I continuously self-checked, I went, you know what, this is really fucking draining me day after day after day. I don't want to get up out of bed. It's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
What do I want to be doing instead? Because I don't have to be here as a stay-at-home mum. My kids could easily be in care.
Mm.
And particularly here in Australia, if you are a low-income earner, there's also rebates that go with childcare, where I looked at that back when we had almost no money. It was going to cost me something like 12 cents a day.
Mm.
Maybe more now, if we, that was certainly years ago. But certainly I have many mums that I know of, friends, and certainly women that I coach. It's like $12 a day.
Mm.
So you don't have to have your kids at home.
But
so why are you?
You will have to look at your mother wound if you're going to untangle yourself from that sense of responsibility or should.
Yeah.
If it feels like a burden. Like I recently talked about this in Reimagining Motherhood, like saying like that about what you're talking about, that process of checking in. Like I keep checking in. Yep. This is still a really conscious choice for me to be home with my youngest and for me to have one day of her being cared for.
Yeah.
And I still choose that. Even on days where I'm like, fuck, I'd rather be working or I'd rather be doing something else, I still choose that because it still feels most nourishing to me, to my family values, to my bigger vision.
Yeah.
But if at any point that wasn't, I also know that I have a choice to put her in care.
Yeah. We're just jumping in to let you know what is happening in the worlds of bridgetwood.life and julietenner.love in case there's a little opening for you to jump in and expand your life a little bit deeper. So what's happening in your world, Bridge?
It's Mothermorphosis, a free 3-day series all about identity, your motherline, and your parenting from the lens of the ways in which we are constantly transforming and evolving on this motherhood journey. So I really invite you to join that. We begin on Sunday, the 11th of September. Sign up at bridgetwood.life. And you, Jules?
Is Queen School. So Queen School is now an online course with 4 full modules that you are self-paced and work your way through, combined with 12 months of really stretching that out as I help you really integrate, embody, and move through the blocks so that you can literally become Queen School in your life. So Queen School is all about connection, pleasure, sensuality, magnetic communication, feminine energy, and embodiment with me over now a beautifully integrated 12-month experience. So you can find out more at julietenner.love. Yeah, so there's that. I really think we need to look at that piece. I also think we need to look at what are all of the ways that I can be supported that I have previously been closed down to.
Mm.
Where can I receive more physical support? What services can I be in touch with that offer me more support? What friend systems, community systems can I tap into that offer me more support?
Mm. Yeah. What other things are available to me that will give my children, perhaps a stimulation that I feel like I don't want to be giving them right now in this season? So an example of that might be like, can I join a toy library? And so that I know that every week or two we're going to take back what we've got and get something new and fresh. And then that means when I bring that stuff home, my kids are like super engaged and inspired by it. And I know I get some time for myself, you know, and that can be really supportive.
Yeah. Yeah. What are community programs? What are support programs? Do I actually need some physical or mental health support? What does that look like to access things that you've never accessed before in order to change your reality?
Yeah.
What does it look like if you're having a really hard season to go, okay, what are my options here? Can I go and live with the kids with mum and dad? Can I, and I've met plenty of women along the path who have got a house together with another single mother and they co-parent together. There's plenty of communities that are still looking at trying to resource how do we co-parent or co-school together.
Yeah.
What are the other systems, ways to access the support that you perceive as missing? So I never had mother care. So I didn't have babysitting on tap.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I invested in my community. I did volunteer work where my kids were in communities that I really wanted them to be part of. And all of a sudden, the thing that I was doing that was contributing to something was also building relationships that gave back tenfold to whatever I contributed. My children came with me everywhere. What does it look like to, you know, do swaps with mums? That's what I always did. Like even Kasha and I mean, Kasha lived next door up until only a couple of months ago. And since our babies were born, we've done a day of daycare each. Our daughters have been raised like sisters.
Yeah.
No one else gave us that support. Over the years, I just would say to mums, I'd really love a date night a month. Would you? I haven't met a mum yet who's like, no, I don't want a date night a week. You can, no, okay, cool. Let's babysit for each other.
Yeah.
Great. And I don't even have to move the kids. I had a couple of friends and we would just go to each other's houses once a month. And so their kids were already in their bed. We parented in the same sort of styles. We met needs in the same way. We'd leave each other a little snack plate and a candle so that it was like a night off for us at the same time as we're babysitting and giving our friend a night off. We always had the agreement that right at the end when we're wanting to get sexy with our partner, we don't want to have a conversation with each other. So we were always like bag packed when we heard the car, check out the door, see you later, mate. Right? Like, what can you do to actually resource yourself? Who are the mental health practitioners that you can resource? Who are the physical health practitioners and services that you can resource? I would argue, particularly in our particular culture and area of the world, that there's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it does mean you've got to change what you're doing and what you're thinking and how you're entering it, because you've got freedom. And it's okay to struggle and it's okay for it to be really fucking hard. But you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
So what does it look like to not do it alone? What do you need? How can you access that? How can you plug into that? How can you give back, right? Because everything still is like being of service, right? When you're of service, something flows back to you. Yeah. How do I contribute to relationships, community, other systems so that I reap the rewards 100-fold from those? I mean, honestly, building relationships with the kinder mums, with the playgroup mums, with the school mums has contributed to my life 1,000 times to whatever time I've put into it.
No, absolutely. And that is actually, you know, the bringer of joy and pleasure too, right? Like, is just to be able to, the feeling of connection that comes with that kind of contribution, and then the flow and the ease is on the other side of when that flows back to you. When someone says, oh, I'll take her for an afternoon, you're like, yeah, the kids would love to come play, right? And then you go, oh, I have all this time I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
Or, right? Like, it becomes this beautiful, like, reciprocity.
Yeah. So I think we've got to look at, in answer to your question, all of those factors. Because if we feel victim to our life, we will feel like we're living in a cage that's continuously getting more and more pressurized. And that breaks my heart that that's where people are living.
Yeah.
And I don't want that for you. So how else can you empower yourself to change that? Then I would say part of what we already touched in is receiving, is that in order to have more joy and pleasure in your life, you actually have to be really good at receiving. Once you've done this part that we just talked about, how do you allow more? How do you let go and allow more to happen around you? The next part from allowing is receiving it in, because you can allow something to happen, but not really let yourself feel it.
Yeah. And then so if you haven't felt it, has it even happened as
Right.
well?
And someone can say, like your example just then, oh, do you want me to take the kids for an hour after kinder? And you're like, oh, no, I couldn't possibly, no. So you're back in your old story, blocking anything that's coming towards you.
No, I don't want to open to that. Yeah.
You've got to get really good at receiving. I now practice when I notice those things come up in my head saying, I could just say yes. Because I'm saying out loud to myself, I could just say yes. Because it helps me remember that what is happening in my body is old wounding that says, I can't, I'm unworthy, I'm not allowed, it's too much on you, I'm too much of a burden, I'm too much, blah, blah, blah. It allows me to go, oh, I actually have the option. I could just say yes. And it allows the other person to, often they smile and they're like, yep, you could. And I'm like, great, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You got to be able to receive it in, because the moments are happening all around you, but do you let yourself receive them? That's a feminine art. How much can I let enter my body, enter my being, enter my heart, enter my feeling state? How much can I let myself be altered rather than needing to be the center of whatever is happening? How much can I let myself be felt and feel and be opened? Like, the art of receiving is,
how safe is it to be able to open that wide and feel that?
Yeah. So in order to have more joy and pleasure in your day, I think you've got to be able to do those things. Break it apart. It's not all yours. Let go of the shit that isn't yours. Let yourself allow more experiences in your life, and then receive those experiences when they come knocking on your door. Because or else you're saying to the chef of the universe, I order this, and they bring it to you and you're like, oh, couldn't possibly eat that.
I couldn't possibly have that.
So how much do you think that chef of the universe is going to keep bringing you that thing? Probably not very much. So get really good at receiving.
Yeah. And I was going to say also too, like when you notice, you're in rigidity or you're in closure or you're in like, you're not able to feel things as much, then what do you need to get back into that state? What can you draw on when you're thinking too much or you're kind of on the next thing, so future focused, you're not even present?
Yeah.
What is it for you that brings you into presence?
Yeah. And I would add to this, I think there's the awareness that when we talk about the demands of motherhood, like this list that is full of demands that somehow we will complete.
Yeah.
So we just have to keep going. Well, I mean, there's so many needs and demands. It literally will never end.
That's right.
Which means you get to choose. It is just as important what you say no to as what you say yes to, right?
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to joy and pleasure, particularly when in the demands of motherhood, is getting really clear that the demand will never leave. So what if you just like go, all right, just going to throw it up, hand it over.
Yeah.
There's always demand. What if I don't have to feel pressured to be responsible for the demand?
Yeah. What of that demand do I actually want to say yes to?
Yeah. Choose your life in alignment. I'm really good at these things. I'm not so great at those things.
Yeah. I don't need to have a touch point on every single thing that's going on in this household, right? I can hand that over. I find myself doing this, Mark and I talk about something, and I'll find myself about to go in and like research it and take it over. And then I'm like, hang on, no. I'm going to leave that. Like what you're talking about, like, going to leave that, going to leave room for that to be taken care of, because I don't need to. It doesn't need to be mine.
Doesn't need to be mine.
Because that doesn't need to be mine.
No.
What am I opening myself up to?
Right.
That is more in alignment for me.
Yeah. Hello. Feminine energy versus masculine. It's my responsibility to do, to complete, to take over, to be the best at, to do better.
Yeah.
What happens if I just relax my hyper masculine state and instead I go, I get to feel pleasure and check in with what I want. Right now. And that's good for everyone. Yeah.
And what's good for me is often what's good for my kids.
Yes.
Like what's good for me like last night, what was really good for me is to put my AirPods in and have a song up really loud and dance like around the house, because that was really good for me.
Yeah.
And my kids were like, at one point they were like, put it on, like we want to hear it. And I put it like the song on, and then that was too loud for them. And so I'm like, sorry, I want it really loud. So if you can't have it this loud, I'll put it back on my AirPods and I'll catch it later. Like, because that was really good for me to follow the feeling of what that was evoking in my body. And I'm following that feeling until I've explored all of that. And then I'll come back to you and we'll have dinner. Because that's what feels good. And I was watching my daughter, my youngest, watch me. And I thought, yeah, remember this. Remember how to access this. When everything feels big and hard and there's endless demands and the list is going into the hours, remember how to choose this.
Exactly.
Remember how to feel so good in your body that you don't want to listen to anybody else right now.
Yeah. So powerful.
Right? And then when all of that like pulsating energy is just like almost dripping off me, I'm back available for you now.
Yeah.
And I have so much more capacity because I've met myself.
It's really beautiful.
Right?
Yeah,
and
it's really beautiful.
And I have danced like that for as long as I can remember. So it's always been my thing.
Yeah.
But if I don't make room for that, I think it's
which really is just allowing though, isn't it?
It's allowing.
Yeah.
It's
when you
allowing.
say make room, it's not
Sorry,
like,
not even
I've got to like make room.
No, it's actually just allowing what wants to spontaneously come out, because it's part of my nature.
Yeah.
But in various ways, we all learned to bury over the inner 4-year-old, right? And what she loved, because we learned often it was too much or it was not enough or whatever for the people that we internalized were God in our life. And so I think that there is so much value for ourselves and for our children for us to reclaim that and to allow that which is being stirred within us to take up more space. Because that, and kind of circling back around to that point on, how you want to be in your motherhood in this season is to separate what's the research says about what's best for you or what's best for them, and consider that your kids just want to see the twinkle in your eye. And if that twinkle in your eye is happening because you're lusciously dedicated to raising them and being a stay-at-home mother, then do that and trust that. But if your twinkle is like, fuck, I can feel the burning of a career coming up again, then follow that and do that, because that's what they're looking for.
So much, yes.
Right?
So much, yes.
But can we allow it? Can we allow it in?
Can we allow our own alignment?
Yeah.
Particularly when it rubs up against previous conceptions, judgments, and identities that we have held or identified ourselves in the world by.
Yeah.
Created potentially friendships and communities based on. What does it look like to disintegrate all of that and instead birth the new version of you that's in ever greater alignment, knowing that whatever you create today at some point will grow old for you? You're always going to be changing.
Like a snake shedding skins.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just maybe briefly then answer the question, how do you do joy and pleasure in motherhood? So how do you do it?
Well,
Bridget?
it's dancing. It's like definitely. And I also realized that I sing a lot. I actually sing a lot when I'm angry. I sing a lot when I'm happy. And I think it really helps me regulate myself and like get me present.
So good.
And I definitely carve out time for the things that inspire me. Sometimes at the perceived cost, in inverted commas, to my children. So I might put a child in front of a show because I really want to like work on this quick thing, or I want to research this thing, or I'm learning this thing. Or I, set them next to me with some Play-Doh, and when they ask me to go and get them every other little thing, I'll say, look, I'll get that for you soon, but right now I'm focusing on this. Because I've done this enough, like I've been a mother long enough to know what resentment feels like. And that's not a gift to them. The gift to them is to be really clear about my yeses and my nos.
Love it.
And also allow them to build a tolerance of frustration. And for me, not like be unshakable in my worthiness as they're angry with me.
Mm.
Because sometimes they will be.
Mm.
Children live in the now, they want what they want now, which is fine. It's developmentally normal. But also as mothers, we also have our own desires and needs that need to be fulfilled and listened to and honored. Mm. And they can take up space too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always think in my head, there's this, there's the irony of you don't love this right now, but one day you're going to love me for this.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And so and I can think back to so many things as a child, oh yeah, I'm actually grateful to mum for that.
Yeah.
But did I like it in the moment? Fuck no.
Yeah,
I hated it.
Totally.
Right? And so I don't want to be so polarized toward a certain way of always using this particular tone with my child all the time and always offering therapeutic interactions with them, that I'm actually out of congruence with myself and what I see is what is best for them.
Yeah.
Because what is best for them might really grate with them in this current version of them. Mm. In this current version of them who can't see what I see.
I just love it.
Right.
Oh, no, I just feel all sparkly on the inside. I love it, which is joy, right?
Yeah.
It is joyful to receive the experience of witnessing another woman in her alignment and therefore her joy. You feel joy in response to witnessing her joy.
Mm. That's the beautiful feminine, right?
Isn't it? This is, exactly my point.
Yeah, delicious. And that's also and this circles back to the community piece, right? How can your community that you plug into, that you create around you, be an energy source for you?
Yes. And on that, be careful with who you're surrounding yourself by, because you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah, and if everyone's bitching and moaning, do you want that?
Yep. If everyone has money struggles, it's probably where your money's going to be.
Mm.
So
if
you do
want relationship issues, if everyone's having parenting problems.
Yeah. So be careful, 1, how much time you spend with them, and 2, if they're not in alignment with where you want to be or you're elevating towards, then who is? Go put yourself in their space. Mm. Because just like happened just then, you will feel and vibrate to the way that they're vibrating.
Yeah.
Right? We all would have just felt Bridget did when she spoke then. I have no doubt that you as a listener felt something. Joy, sparkle, feeling lighter, more, crown opened, more elevated towards godliness, if we like. Mm. Yeah. Because we
all want to plug into that.
Yeah.
To all of us when we give ourselves permission.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can add into how do I do joy and pleasure. And honestly, I wish it was more eloquent, but really I just give less fucks.
Yeah. I like that.
And in actual fact, I really love that book. What is it? The Subtle Art
of Giving a Fuck.
Of Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck.
Of not giving a fuck. Not giving a fuck.
Maybe it's that. Whatever it is. Great book. What I loved about that was it was not so much about, just letting shit go and giving no fucks about anything. It was saying consciously choose the fucks that you give.
Yeah. And I actually talked to a client about this. You've got to choose your shit sandwich. As well. He talks about this, everyone gets given a shit sandwich.
It's all hard. Pick your hard.
Pick your hard. So where do you want your hard to be? You can't eat it.
No. I met this couple a while ago actually and spent some time with them who had no children and were on a conception journey. It was really hard. Mm. And they made some comment, it's not as hard as you guys with 4 kids and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, mate, it's equal hardness. It's hard not having kids. It's hard having kids.
Yeah.
It's hard not working. It's hard working.
It's hard exercising. It's hard not exercising.
Right. Choose your hard.
Yeah.
Choose your hard. So I honestly just give way less fucks. Like I just find so much more joy in my children now than when I was consciousing myself out of the present moment experience. Because I was always like, am I doing this right? What are they doing? How do I respond? What is the right words to use? How am I going to scaffold this? What am I like? I was never there.
Yeah.
Whereas now when I don't worry so much about the impact of whatever happens right now in the future moment, and I'm orchestrating myself based on a projected future moment based on actually my own wounds, way happier.
So would you say that that's a product of valuing parenting less, or is that with the perspective that you get having parented longer, having seen children who are a product of a variety of different styles and it not mattering as much? Like,
it's
what
so interesting
that that's a product
well
of?
In actual fact, I've asked myself that question. Is this a value shift? Is this where I have put other values higher than parenting? And so I actually have consciously asked myself that. And yet time and time again, when push comes to shove, I still choose parenting as a top value. So I don't actually think it's that parenting has come down. I actually think it's the way that I view my contribution to parenting has expanded.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like the exact right words, the exact right orchestration, the holding the child in your, like, you know, zone of what you think.
It really looks more like feeling really connected to joy and alignment within myself and to the joy and alignment that I see in the individual moments that my children are in, be they challenging or not.
Yeah.
And that I find the joy and alignment in being with them in this moment.
Yes.
So I don't
whatever that moment is, like whatever the texture of that moment is.
It's no longer a set of rules.
Yeah.
It's literally just be in joy, like just radiate that sunlight of like, this is glorious. I want you. I want this. I want this relationship, this moment. You're wonderful. Like be the reflection of how magnificent they are.
And this is ultimately like the most powerful parenting tool is how we are in energetic exchange with our children, because that's what they feel the most. And that's what you're talking about, which also requires a skill level too, to be able to feel what they're setting you up to feel as well. And not push that away.
Yes, 100%, totally all of those things. Yes. I mean, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because it's not like it's all just pleasure and joy, but I don't get so sucked into the hardness and I don't get so sucked into having all of the answers.
Yeah.
Because I'm led with what is the most in alignment way that I can move forward that maintains relationship.
Yeah. And that becomes the guiding principle.
That becomes the guiding principle.
Beautiful.
How do I move forwards loving you and this more? What do I need to shift within myself to be able to love you and this more?
Yeah.
So joy and pleasure feel hand in hand with that. Yeah, of course there's times I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. God, your demands are so intense today. Of course. But I see those as moments in a day and days within a year.
Yeah.
They are not a continuous experience for me. If it's a continuous experience for you, then I would suggest that you're not actually living a life in alignment.
Yeah.
But if they are a transient experience, then that is the border of support and challenge. That is what it is to grow. And it wouldn't matter if I was living this life or another life, that would still exist.
Yes. I love
so
that.
There's joy there. Because it doesn't have to look like anything or be anything. It's just, is this in alignment or not? Because there's joy here in all of it. Even in the challenges, when we're in alignment, there's a sense of joy in being able to like crush that glass ceiling, belief, problem. Like there's still a sense of inspiration and joy even in the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's meaningful. Yeah, it's fulfillment that you get from moving toward that because it's aligned.
Yeah.
Whereas we feel depleted, resentful, exhausted by trying to move toward the thing that's not aligned.
No, exactly. And I would add on to that, of course, I do really center my own experience of beauty, adornment, and spending time on and with my body, because it is my body that will give me the capacity to feel and the capacity to feel pleasure. It is your feminine. It is the body, the home, that will give you the capacity to feel those things. So if I am not feeling those things, I'm probably not in my body particularly often, or spending my life orienting towards it. So I make the time to do that.
Yeah, beautiful. And typically, like, we are kind of learn as children to leave the body, right? Like, we live in a head-centered culture, and where we don't trust the body, we try to, quieten it down, stop its sensations. And so that reorientation to the body is the pathway.
It's the pathway of expanding joy and pleasure. And I think relationship is really central to that. Your experience of life will be colored by your experience of relationship. You've had a shit argument in relationship, I bet you have a shit day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're not feeling well supported or well communicated, shut down, shut off, closed off, whatever. It's probably how you feel about your life. So I do really center relationship as being a foundation pillar to how much joy I feel in my life.
Yeah. And invest accordingly.
And investing, 100%. And self-pleasure. You are allowed orgasms, orgasmic experiences, pleasure with the sun, pleasure with a jade egg, pleasure with a vibrator, pleasure with your fingers, pleasure from not wearing a bra, pleasure at the water beach. Like, you are just allowed to experience your sensuality, which brings you pleasure. And it doesn't have to be, I can only do this alone and only when I carve out this dedicated time in which to honor my goddess practice.
Yeah. No. There's a whole landscape of opportunity waiting to be discovered, right? Whole new frontiers. Whole new towards.
I just think that's part of the thing, though, right? I mean, way back we had a podcast where we talked about our experience of sexuality moving from it shut down with motherhood into I have to specifically carve out and separate the seductress from the mother into what does it look like as the next stage of practice when they all morph together and you're no longer one this or one that, you're all at the same time. And I still think that applies here.
Yeah, absolutely. That you don't have to separate out these parts of your life, but that they get to beautifully collide.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my voice is dying. We're going to need to wrap up this.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. Yes.
But thank you very much for listening. We do really love these questions that take us somewhere. And we would love to hear your questions if you've got them, particularly if they've been inspired by the last few podcasts that were probably a little bit, we talked around a lot of really larger scale concepts, a lot of mental work, a lot of questions, a lot of ways to contemplate the blocks that you have more than it's missing in your life. And here's the things to add in. So we would love to hear from you. If this was a struggle, if this was a challenge, if this was a brain pop or heart pop, if there was a place you're like, oh, but what about this? Then bring it to us. We would love to have the opportunity to answer that for you.
We really would. And what about you? What have you got on, Jules?
Queen School is the place to find out and be facilitated through all of the blocks that you have to your feminine as you integrate magnetic communication, feminine embodiment, sensuality, sexuality, and all things deliciousness over at Queen School that's now facilitated in Honey Club. You can find out about that at julietenner.love. And you, Bridgie?
And I have a free 3-day series coming up called Mothermorphosis. It's all things identity, your lineage, and your parenting. So I invite you to jump on that. You can find out more at bridgetwood.life. Remember to nourish the woman, to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.